All right, welcome back, you guys, to our channel. This is interviews series of the Awakening the Lumen Heart workshop. Today with us is the next teacher, Pablo. And please, Pablo, introduce yourself. Tell us your full name and how you say it properly.
Hi, I'm Pablo McCarte, or Welsh Pablo. Um, Original name was Paul, but everyone just calls me Pablo,
All right,
so I go along with it. So yeah,
cool.
Pablo or Welsh Pablo.
Where are you right now, Pablo?
South Wales, UK. A little town called Abertillery, a couple of miles north of Newport and Cardiff, in the hills out of the way of the crazy cities.
Nice, lovely spot to be. And Pablo, what is that where you grew up? Where are you from originally?
I'm from here. I'm from originally a little village called Brynithel, which means hill of Ithel. Ithel was a mythical giant, and yeah, so I still pretty much live there. So it's only a couple of miles away. It's just all connected with hills and stuff here. So yeah, still here. I've been here all my life, other
Do you
than
have a
sort of 6 months in Manchester, and that's it.
Okay. But you traveled extensively, right?
Yeah. I've worked in the music industry for a long time, and sort of I've been fortunate enough to see a lot of the world while doing that. And
So
yeah,
your
it's
your
just not.
career background is as
Um, in the music industry, so I've been in the music industry on and off since the age of 16. Really, I had my first business when I was 16 as like sound system hire, and yeah, just been touring with lots of artists and bands and crews around the world for the last, well, full time really since 2001, 2002, just non-stop until lockdown started last year. So I finished my last show was this week a year ago, and I haven't been doing anything since with it. So
sounds like a fun life. And
it's yeah, hence me looking like I'm 60 years old. It sort of ages you a little bit,
come on.
but no, it's good, and I'm not massively missing it at the minute, but I am missing it to a point, but yeah.
Right,
This kind of work has kept me really, really busy over the last year, so it's great.
cool. And so what is your educational background?
So in the 90s, I was alongside doing the sound stuff. I was always hypnotherapist and studying past lives and future lives, and teaching remote viewing. I was learning how to do remote viewing from one of the original guys who did the American military work,
Buchanan?
uh, David Morehouse.
Okay.
So I did that for a while. Yeah, it's just sort of teaching meditation, and that sort of thing has gone back 25 years. I did lots in the 90s, and always running UFO groups and sky watches and doing the whole Stephen Greer thing. I did that for years and years, and yeah, it was great fun.
Fascinating. Um, okay, cool. And so how many years have you been teaching the ATIH?
I discovered ATH back in 2012.
Okay, good.
So I teaching it since 2014.
2014. So we're talking about 7 years, pretty much.
Uh, yeah, yeah, 7 years incomplete. Yeah,
And
yeah.
every year, were you doing one training a month, or like how many per year, more or less?
I was a bit of an ATIH junkie. So when I tried doing the ATIH workshop for about 3 times in 2012, couldn't make it happen. So I eventually managed to get onto my first one, and then I think I did four between. I think I did four in about 6 months.
Okay.
It was about a year. I put about a year as well as doing some other bits with it, and yeah. So I was a bit of a junkie at the start, just wanting as much knowledge as I could. It just sort of overtook me a little bit, and yeah, I just loved it.
And so how did you meet Drunvalo?
You mean physically meet him or discover his work?
How do you discover his work and then physically meet him and then participate in the
Yeah.
training?
I did. It was quite odd. I remember being on tour in 20 start end of 2010 or 2011 maybe, and my mother, I was somewhere wherever, and my mother sent me this YouTube clip, and I started watching it, and I just remember thinking, what is some guy in the desert? Why are you sending me this? I remember listening to him and going, that's just another hippie in the desert, and I turned it off. And I was just, I think back to, I think, what were you doing? What were you doing? And then I sort of had, at the end of 2011, this work is quite strange. Well, for me, it's the whole event sequence for me finding Drunvalo started with, I was in a airport New Year's Eve 2012. I think it was Melbourne. I was tired and just jet lagged and doing the whole thing. Walking into a bookstore, picking up this book, and I'm started reading this book on Buddhism for busy people. And I'm like, and then that whole 24 hours was the most strange ass kicking I've ever had in my life. It was just like, right, okay, you've had a couple of years out, it's time to get back in. And it was just one thing after another thing after another thing. And then, yeah, it was just managed to, I ended up in Avebury, which is where I do all my teaching now. And I've been to Avebury since I was a kid. I love it there. And I just had I sort of did a meditation in the Long Barrow, and it was April. I was at I'm part of the Lay Hunters group, which is a group of people who, a bunch of geeks. We basically go and hunt ley lines and map them out and dowse for them. And so I went to a convention down there with some lovely people there. Ended up doing a meditation in the Long Barrow, and that was so a few hours after that. So in the night, the first crop circle of 2012 appeared, and it was a flower of life. And it could be being so early in the crop season, it doesn't normally happen that early. So I was like, okay, don't really know what a flower of life is, but that's cool. And then I was going through some more stuff in the summer, did a bit of research on the flower of life, and then next thing I know, I was back at the Barrow. I always bring, when I got a band from anywhere, we just, when we got days off, I'll take them to Avebury and Stonehenge and Glastonbury, and so I took them down. We ended up doing a meditation, showed them with the dows in the henge, and then took them up to the Barrow, and then we did a meditation there. And I was just told as we were driving off, I had this sign that something was going to appear in that field at that point. And I was like, right. I said to the boys, I was like, right, there's
Well, hold on.
something's going to happen there.
Okay,
And then, sorry,
can you ask you what you said? You were told that something was going to appear. Who told you? How did you know?
uh, difficult to explain, but it's one of the things. It was like a byproduct of doing this work. Something happened to me, and I sort of got communication with certain things. Uh, yeah, it's just like a byproduct of doing the ATIH. It's one of the benefits I've had from it. And I just was just shown that something was going to happen in that field, and I just thought, right, okay, let's just make a note of it. And then the day after it popped up, there was another flower of life in that field in a specific formation, and I'm like, right, okay, it's got to be someone a bit more into this. So then I just went straight into the flower of life research, and then ended up finding the ATIH workshops, and I was like, right, got to do this. This is phenomenal. Then just the books were just blew my mind. I read Living in the Heart, and that was it. Just everything changed after that for me. It was just, yeah, just crazy. Yeah, it just became a bit of a Drunvalo junkie at that point. Started trying to absorb it as much as I could, watching and reading everything else, and got through the books. I wasn't even fully through the books before I did my first ATIH. But yeah, I loved it. It was amazing. And
Nice.
then I managed to do my teacher training with him in 2014. And there was like 5 of us, only 5 teachers. Normally, when you do a workshop with Drunvalo, it's it's crazy. There's just
150,000
yeah.
people.
So I was just in this privileged situation where there was just five of us, and he drove us to dinner, and it was just weird. It was almost like getting starstruck. I never get starstruck with pop stars and things, but I was a I had a bit of fanboy thing going on there with him. It was quite funny.
Nice. That's so cool. I mean, it is a real privilege. Everybody else was in these massive workshops with thousands of people, and
Yeah, yeah,
I can see that.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I was trying to get to that original workshop in 2013, but um, yeah, it just never. For perfect reasons, it never happened. So
How
yeah,
did
a
you get
man's
invited
nice.
to this private one?
I just think it worked out that way. It was during the transition from ATIH to Cosmic Gracework.
Uh-huh.
It was actually called The Way to Do is to Be at that point. It was the second. It was the second workshop, I believe, on The Way to Do is to Be. The first one was when there was 111 people in that room, and he was finding his feet with the workshop. Certain things didn't work. He realized that people needed to do the ATIH work to actually be able to move through the cosmic grace work with ease. I know he had some challenges, and then, man, I was just so privileged to be able to do it. I everything lined up that year so well. I was in the States for like 4 months on tour out there, and my tour finished, and then I had 3 weeks
Vacation.
before the workshop, before the Cosmic Grace workshop, and then I did my teacher training straight after. So I stayed in Sedona for like a month.
Sweet.
It was just, yeah, it was just bizarre. The whole thing happened being in Sedona for that long, and Flagstaff, but yeah, it just worked out. It just worked out that there was 38 of it, 36 of us in that second Cosmic Grace workshop, and it was just that doesn't happen with him. It's that place is always completely sold out, and if it's sold out, they put it online and go to 1,000 to 10,000 people. I think they had the one, but it was just, I look back and it's just so privileged. We yeah, and some things happened in that Cosmic Grace workshop that was just wow. It's just having him there guiding a small group like that was just phenomenal. And the same thing with the teacher training. However it worked out, it was just however they decided to move forward. There was five of us there, just five of us.
Right.
So
Brilliant.
we had some great teaching from him. And
That's amazing. So, my next question will be about the experience. This is a question that I asked all your colleagues, and it's really about your personal experience of the Merkaba and the tiny space of the heart.
okay.
Please tell us anything that is relevant and that you feel like it has worth sharing with the rest of the community.
Um. So I guess I'll talk about the tiny space for the first time. Before I talk about the Merkaba, but uh, it's for me it was a deeper awareness, and I know that the whole awareness thing is a debatable subject on what awareness is, but people have often talked about the heart, and you know some people say breathe and you're there in your heart, but this, from a left brain perspective, the way he describes it, or it was just like bing, everything was just wow. He's telling me how to do this. He's guiding me in a logical manner into this space that feels okay. The way that I describe it as is, if you do if you do any spiritual work or use an intention to help someone, yeah, to me you're going to be in that space,
Mm.
whether you acknowledge what it is or whether you um, know it or not. To me, you have to move into that awareness, that sense of being, to be able to do that. I think that would send you there anyway. And I believe I always went there at certain points over the last 20, 25. And after I did my first teacher training, I landed in the UK and virtually went straight to another teacher's workshop. There were 26 people in there, 24 females, and I was one of two guys. And virtually everyone in there was a spiritual practitioner of something. And when we guided them in on the first heart meditation, there was about 5 of them came out and said, I I've been there before. I know where it is. It was almost like you put a tag on what they'd experienced because they were practitioners of something, whether it was Reiki, being mediums, healers, however you describe it. These people have experienced it. They just don't know what it is. And it's almost like Drunvalo puts a tag on it, called it sacred space. But then when we talk about the tiny space, it's another level again. It's uh, something when I first experienced it. It wasn't where you read the books and then you do it through the books. Being in a group of people and experiencing that tiny space for the first time, having someone actually taking you into it, it's almost as if that agreement's been in place for however long, and at that point, everyone in that room has agreed to go into that 0 point and into that tiny space for the first time and be aware of it. And it was just something, like I said to you earlier when we were off camera, some of these things you can't actually put into words, and that was one of them. It was I've been used to deep meditations constantly for years, but something was different. It was just life changed for me at that point.
Can you describe the
And
sensation of the sensory part of things that you were able to perceive when you went there? I'll tell you, um, my experience was of a sense of compression. I felt in that darkness of the heart, of the cave of the heart. I could feel, the direction generic, and I went in that direction, and then there was a moment of compression, and then a dot of light at the
okay.
very distance, and I knew something had changed because my perspective went like there was depth.
Okay.
There was a massive depth in front of me. Some people describe it as a universe, but like I really felt, maybe yes, that's what it was. It felt like being in front of the expanse of space,
Right.
of the galactic or universal space. Didn't see a
Yeah.
lot of lights. Didn't see a lot of stars like people describe it, but it was like massive.
But you'd obviously experienced some things at that point from your work in ashrams and
Yeah,
stuff, right?
absolutely, yes.
Yeah. I think again, everyone, no one comes out of it with the same experience. It's everyone experiences it completely different.
Mm.
And I think personally on that point, I think my lifestyle was incredibly busy. I mean, silly busy. I look back on that period and think that I should have stopped a lot longer before that. But if I hadn't have found this work, I definitely would be dead by now. I'm convinced of that. But for me, it was just that first initial thing was the stillness I'd never experienced, and it sort of it went from you experience it in your. I experienced it in my mind first. It was a stillness I'd never experienced, and then it sort of transcended to my body as well.
Mm.
I've experienced deep states where my body have been, in the 90s doing the whole remote view and the out of body experiences, the lucid dreaming. You go through all that. This was It was different to anything. It was different to it was just different. It was a stillness I'd never experienced before, and I don't think I have reached it since. But with the cosmic grace work, it's like a different thing again. But I think it's that initial hit of that experience that you've done something that you hadn't done before, or you hadn't experienced before, or consciously known mentally, emotionally, physically, which is why I developed a system in my own workshops to make sure that we focus on that before we go into the meditation, so it comes naturally when we reach that tiny space. Because it just, and I still feel it on the workshops as well. When we take the groups into the tiny space, and when we activate the Merkaba, I get that feeling from the whole group. It's as if I want to go in there with them. I'm mostly in there with them anyway, but it's like, you just, you're gone. It's like, I always describe it. I went into hospital once. The only time I've ever spent a couple of days in hospital, but they give me morphine. And at that point, I always describe it to my students, like, when I reach those certain levels, it's as if, or even when they do it, it's like someone gives me morphine and my body just doesn't, it just goes, ugh. It's like the body doesn't matter. That's all I can describe as the body doesn't matter at that point. And that stillness that I experienced was just, wow, just something incredible.
Nice. So this is a very introspective experience, and I am wondering if that translated into the Merkaba and how it affected your other experience of life, or how it connected to the Merkaba.
Well, in the same workshop, so the Merkaba experience for me was the one that sort of gave me the confirmation that something had changed, something was different. And I remember just going into because on day 4, you'll remember day 4, there's a lot of information that comes at you from a left brain perspective. It's almost overwhelming to a point. And I remember having some self-doubt, thinking, I'm never going to get this, because I need to take time to learn the left brain stuff in my own time, out the way. I'm like, I need to gather this information and then I'll absorb it in my own time. But it was so intense, the information that come, and I was in a bliss state anyway. You're in a bliss state from day 3, because you're doing all the long meditations. So you're like, that week was phenomenal, man. I keep, this is reminding me of that first time, and it's wow. But going into the Merkaba meditation was just fascinating, and I always talk about this before I take the students into the activation. I remember I was sat down and we were talking about. So Tessie was giving us where we go to the breakdown before you go into the meditation. Okay, so you in your tiny space, you do the connection, and then I'm sat there like that, and all of a sudden, I'm like, I always describe it as boom. I was like, what is that? What is that? And it was just like this whole thing was there. This whole thing was there. And my body had that sensation. And it was, I'm like, I don't even want to move. I don't know what's going on. And I'm like, I've broke it. I thought, for some reason, I remember in that state, it was a bit of confused, because I thought that the disc was meant to be like there. And I said, something's wrong. It's around, it's around my waist, or I just felt it around my legs and my waist. And I'm like, what is this? And I just remember, I don't even care. So I just closed my eyes. So before we even went into the meditation, just going through the steps, my intention, it was all there. It was all there. And it must have just popped, and I just remember looking at Tessie, thinking she doesn't know. And I'm like, am I doing something wrong? And I just thought, I just closed my eyes and I went, and that was it. I was just straight away, instantly flying. I remember seeing it just going over this ocean and then up over this mountain, and I'm like, wow, this is just, what is this? And then I couldn't remember a lot after that. And then there was lots of things going on, and then just being in this state, getting used to it and breathing into it. And I remember coming out of it, and about a minute or two after where we started talking about experiences, someone was talking about experience, and then I've knelt down and felt my calf. My calves have felt really tight. I remember massaging my calves, going, "What is going on? They're massive." So my calves had just done this thing where they just expanded out. I'm like, something's wrong, you and I was realized that whenever I do a long haul flight, I get this thing where my calves expand, my legs expand out, and it's like my body. It was almost as if my body had, had thought we were on this long haul flight. Because because the first thing I did was with going like over the sea and then into the mountains, and that was it. It's like my body had this reaction from this whole thing, thinking that we were in the air.
Wow.
It was just doing its natural thing to keep whatever it does to protect me. It did that,
Very
and
interesting.
it was just fascinating. And then about 5 minutes after that, I Carl, one of the guys who was on the workshop in Belgium with me, we something happened. You heard this noise, and then I looked over to him, and he looked at me, and we both clocked this noise at the same time. And then I was like, "No way! There's no way!" And we were on a first floor, and there was all glass on this first floor. Walked over to the glass, see what this noise was, and we both clocked it straight away. And there was a black helicopter just flying around about a mile away, nose down, trying to find out what was going on. And I totally forgot all about the black helicopter situation.
Ron and
Complete
Luca told me exactly the same thing.
right.
Black
I'm
helicopters over their head when they
yeah, but they were the ones that were there early days doing this, so they've all got this. They know about this stuff as well.
I think they
And but like I said, you read it in the book, and then you don't think of it, and then you
your experience.
it's not on your mind, and then it was like what we both had it. So I just remember his face, and we were like, nah. Looked at it when it was there. It was just flying around, and it was just it was just confirmation after confirmation after confirmation that the internal change that had happened, it's there. Something 20. It was I think it was 20 of us in that room. When we activated, it was just that was just wow. That it was the calves thing, and then the other confirmation was outside. It's just crazy.
One
It
thing,
was just fascinating, absolutely fascinating.
very interesting. I know that they have some energy pulse testing technology, um, and that's why they want to know because I mean the human biology there has a resonance that spikes the electrical field, and that's
Hmm.
what they monitor.
Drunvalo describes it as I think it was where the military told him that when someone activates for the first time, it gives off a pulse of energy the same as if you switched on a city of 15,000 people. So if you
Wow,
switch the power on instantly to a city of 15,000 people, the energy it would emit, so the magnetic effect it would have would be equivalent to a city of 15,000 people.
wow, this is fascinating. You're not the only
Yeah.
one, and as I was saying, Ron and Luca, which had their training in different locations, experienced the very same helicopter coming around.
Yes. It's it's one of those things. The first thing you think of is a fear thing, but it didn't even enter your head. You're just like, wow, it's a black helicopter. It's happened. I've activated. I was more happy about getting a confirmation that it had happened.
That way than the
Yeah,
experience itself.
yeah.
Cool. Paul, I'm gonna ask you, Pablo. I'm gonna ask you.
Oh,
Oh, I'm gonna ask you um, the long-winded daily life happiness equation question about I've asked this to all the other colleagues of yours. So there are three things that people want in their life, and that makes them believe that they're going to be happy if they have them, and that's money, health, and relationships. And sure enough, one of them, health, precisely, makes you really miserable if you don't have it. And so after they have all these three things, the equation, happiness, it's in place, and people start actually looking at other things because life become boring, or they finally, start looking inside and start, asking questions about who they are and where they're going and what's the world about and why are they here and so on and so forth. And so for those that having a lot of challenges with these three variables of the equation to happiness, can you share any recommendation or experiences, personal experiences of your students relating to this, happiness questions that are variables that are money, health, and relationships?
Okay. So you mean like so the three fundamentals of what people class as happiness, I guess.
Correct.
Do you
And
mean
how
pre-work? Do you mean pre ATIH or post ATIH or just in general,
how
or what they
people
or what they want after the workshop?
so basically, yeah, how people achieve these three variables or took care of
Right.
these three variables through the workshop or through the
Ah, okay,
workout.
okay, okay. I gotcha, I gotcha. What one of the main things that come up from in the weeks running, it probably takes a month to settle down after that workshop, but when I do the sort of the ATH recap, we call it, so the advanced thing where we do some of the cosmic grace work as well. I spend a lot of time on the first morning of that advanced workshop, where people are confused about what to do with the Merkaba, or what the most common thing comes up is the creation process, and it's a big misconception. It's like, we teach you how to do the creation process, or how it works when you move into your heart space, and how the creation thing comes about. But then they're like, I don't know what to create. It's the most common thing. It's so funny. People are like, I want to create something, I just don't know what to create. And they miss that fundamental thing, which is why I go back over it. It's like, remember when we talk about there are beings who sit and be in their tiny space and just create heaven on earth, or just be in that tiny space and just be allowing yourself to become this vessel for God, or however you want to call this, the source. I think that's a really fundamental thing for this workshop, is knowing that once you move into that space and you keep moving into that space, if you think you're out of that space, if you go back to your brain for what, because it happens, people, it does. I experienced that a couple of months after the workshop. It does, for whatever reason, it draws you out, then you breathe and you go back in, you do your steps. It's just living your life from that space is the difference in the wealth, the health, the relationships, however you want to look at it, and knowing that you're creating your reality from that unity. You haven't got to want something to put the creation process into practice. It's it happens naturally. Your creation will be, you will have a creation from your tiny space, from the unity,
Yeah, it's a
just
fascinating
by
process.
being in that space. And I mean, it's the one thing that I do work with people on. It's like, look, you don't there's no need to desire things. Everything you want will come to you. Everything you need will come to you. And to me, it's pushing that. Yes, if you want something and you want to create it, go in by all means. Go in, use whatever method you want to use to bring that into your reality, and it generally works. But the other side of it is to not worry about desiring things, and not worry about needing to create, unless you want to experiment how you want to do it. But just know that whatever you need is going to come to you. uh, Everything you need is going to come to you. It's not wanting to need something. It's just being in that space, creating the heaven on earth that way. And that's the way I've always perceived it anyway. I learned a few lessons before I actually, like, right, I understand it now. but I have had situations where the one thing I tell my students before we go into, once we do the recap, is just before. So something happened to me on the mountains up here. These mountains to me are sacred. So I'm up there with my dogs. So, I mean, I'm 6 foot. I'm a big lump. I had two big black Rottweilers who people could generally think they're scary, but they're actually these big teddy bears. And I'm on the top of the mountain walking them about, and I come back from my walk, and this truck passes me, and it's just full of rubbish. And I know that he's going to do something, so I'm like throwing the dogs in the back of the car, and I take chase after him. He went somewhere, couldn't see where he was. He disappeared, and I had an idea where he went. So, and there was no way of getting out, and if I followed him, so it was getting dark as well. So I followed him up this road. All of a sudden, I come up across the brow of the one hill, and he had his tipper in the air, and I watched it all slide off. So he just dumped this whole whatever renovation he just done. He just dumped it all on the mountain. So I just got furious. I just got furious, and so he obviously saw my lights coming up, and he dropped his tipper as he was driving, so it would spread it all over the mountain. And then as he was coming back, he couldn't get anywhere because there was only one road in, one road out. So he come up to me, and it was just this thing. I was just so annoyed with this guy for doing that, that I was ready to go to war with this guy. I didn't know what I was going to do. I'm a hippie, I'm not an aggressive guy. I'm not that guy. But I was like, right, this is it. He's gonna get a piece of my mind, so to speak. And then he just drove this tipper off road, went around and left me for to catch him up the way I needed to. I had a regular Volvo at that time, just a regular Volvo V70 estate. So I couldn't. I had to take my time, otherwise the car would have been destroyed. So he ruined his car, his tipper, by going off road, but he got away. So he didn't get away completely. I took his details, and he ended up getting prosecuted for it. But he had his justice. But then I was absolutely livid, absolutely furious. And then I got home, and I was like, right, that's never happening again. I drove 400 miles the next day to buy a 4x4. Completely pointless. Completely pointless. 2 weeks after that, I was leaving for America, to be in America for 4 months, to go on tour, and then do my teacher training and do the Cosmic Grace Workshop in Sedona. So I wasn't going to even be able to use it. But I was like, no, I'm having it. Need this. Going to go and get it. So I had this expensive 4x4 for 10 days, and then I left for America for 4 months. So my father-in-law was using it, and so I was in Sedona, did my workshops, and then a couple of days before I left, I had a phone call saying, there's
a problem.
there's something wrong with the Jeep. It keeps jumping out of gear. I'm like, oh, are you kidding me? Right, okay. So this was an issue. I landed, go back. There was a problem with it. It was looking like I was going to lose a lot of money on this Jeep because the gearbox was going. Cut a long story short, I managed to get rid of it and get my perfect car, because it was pointless me having that. It was just me being in my brain in complete anger, reacting. And then I remember looking for a Volvo, couldn't find anything that I needed. And I sat down in the cafe, and I'm like, I'm done. This thing's done. Like, and then I had go and look in the auctions. I'm not going to the auction. I'm not going to the auctions, because I just keep getting ripped off. Because you go in the auctions, you buy something, it's broke essentially. And I just go look in the auctions. I'd exhausted every avenue for buying cars you could think of, and I said, just go to the auctions. And then I looked on the auctions. It was my perfect car at that point in the auction. I lost about £60 in the whole thing, and this car was perfect. It was just everything I needed in a car at that point. So it's like, wow. Okay. It just proves that you can make silly decisions. So when you do this work, the lessons don't stop. The life that you choose, it's like decisions you make still have an impact on your life.
Mm.
It's just the way you create that space. I created that situation, I think, just because I could tell my students what I've done. But it was just a classic case of being completely in my brain, just being so angry, and I'm right that I need this 4x4 in my life. It's going to happen. And yeah, so it was just, well, that's one of the situations I always tell them
Experiences,
about.
situations. Wow,
So
tension.
you're not immune to lessons once you've done this work. That's all I'm saying.
Absolutely, the lessons never end, right?
Exactly.
Um,
But it's surprising the amount of people who think once you've done this work that
that's over.
you know, yeah, but it just, it's just
Actually, just the
it's a
beginning.
different life. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Um, I wanted to ask you about intention because that is something a bit. I'm a bit like you. Over the last 2 decades of meditation, sometimes, and that is actually most of the time, when I sit down and I am comfortable, I just sink in there, and it don't matter, time and space don't matter no more. It just
Hmm.
feels really good. I'm in there, an hour's gone. You know, but I think it's fundamental, and I'm not able to do it all the time, and that's why I'm asking you to come in there with an intention. Sometimes it's important, there are questions that we want answers for,
Hmm.
and some other times we really need the money to go to the workshop, or we are desperate to take care of the gearbox of the car, or whatever. It's like it's mundane, it's physical, and it's bugging us emotionally and mentally, and so we drag that state of emotional and mental frustration into our heart.
Hmm.
And sometimes we don't do it with a clear intention because we don't know what's the solution. Sometimes we say, all right, I want this, and you put your intention into it. And I am wondering if you have any such cases to share.
Um, I think, do you know what? The most common is the house thing. You know, I've had a situation where someone someone has said to me, a couple actually, why haven't I had my new house yet? I want a new house, you know? And it's really common because one thing that people, I mean, what is the wealth status of you? It's your house, your car, your job, right? That's how society
Perceives it.
values you. That's how society sees you. And it's like most generally I'll have, well, I want a new house. So I'm like, well, ask, go in and ask. The great thing about this work is you're not going to create something that's going to harm you. This is the one thing I have to say to him. It's just like, look, and what you said then was, I want this. I have an intention that I want this. That's fine. That's all good. But the heart, that true source is not going to give you that thing that you want if it's going to harm you. And I've got a classic case of how that happened to me as well. So this is one thing I always say to people, and it's happened to me again in the last couple of weeks. It's so that, again, lessons repeat until you actually fully understand it, fully learn. We talk about the teacher training in Mexico in 2013. So I done, I think, 4 workshops at that point. I desperately wanted to get there, desperately, because all in my mind I needed to get there. This was my calling. I was almost not obsessed, but it was all I was focused on at the point. And in the music industry, or in entertainment on the whole, January, February is a really dry month. Nothing happens in January, February. If you're lucky, mid-March you start, boom, and then your year starts. So you stop in November. So you have to build your finances up to allow you to sort of do that dry time. It's very feast and famine in our industry. So I'm like, right, I have to, it was March that the teacher training was happening, and then everything was geared up to doing that. All of a sudden, my finances did this. I'm like, what? What is going on? I can't. So I was trying everything I could to get to this teacher training. I was starting to sell equipment that was treasured to me. I was thinking, oh, this is just a lesson in resilience. I need to do something to get there. I remember, I think back to my mindset of when I was there, and it was just selling equipment for a lot less than it's worth, just because this is my calling. I have to go. I have to go. And then I remember about 10 days before, I give up. I give up. It's not happening. It's not happening. Everything I was doing to get there just wasn't getting me there, and there was no way I was going. In my mind, I was just, I need to go, need to go, need to go. And I wasn't meant to go. And I know, I look back on that, and I completely understand why I wasn't meant to go. Just everything was. But when I did finally do it, it was amazingly perfect. Everything was just the difference from getting to that workshop to that teacher training to getting to Sedona the way it happened. Even to the point when I was going down to Sedona, this is how great it all lined up. So I did my 3 months of touring out there, and then at the end of it, I was exhausted. But I was flying down to Flagstaff, and I remember, bear in mind now, it's my job sometimes to put musicians on airplanes to get everywhere. It's like that's part of my job is logistics, as well as doing audio. It's logistics to get people around the world with a load of luggage and stuff. I finished. I had a connecting flight, and then I remember sat in the airport and got my gate nice and early, and I just sat there texting one of the other teachers saying, "Yeah, just wait for the gate." All of a sudden, I looked at my phone, and it was like, "What? I've missed a flight." And I looked up. I was like, the gate was there, and I'd managed to miss my flight. I walked to the desk, and I said to the woman, "I'm supposed to be on this flight." She said, "Oh, they've already, they're ready to leave." No, you missed it. And I remember looking at her going, "You don't make any sense. I don't miss flights. I how I couldn't process it. I was like, I've missed a flight. How? You know? I said, I've been sat there. I didn't hear anything. She said, you missed your flight. She said, oh, don't worry. We can get you on the next one. It's blah, blah, blah. It's like, just go to the desk around the corner. She handed me my flight, and it was flight 777 into Sedona, into Phoenix it was. So I'm like, and then I walked around the corner, and it was just like this explosion of stuff giving me information of chill out, it's all good. And that's the kind of thing that happens when you it's just, you get confirmation that you live in your life from that place. So everything you need and you want, it's a different thing, but you just got to be in that. What I tell the students is to just chill out and just create your existence
No, but
from that
hold on.
space. Just keep
I'm a little lost. So what this is where on your way to the actual teacher training,
yeah. So
and so your
it's
flight, you lost the
gliding into
flight.
the Cosmic Grace. The Cosmic Grace workshop was first, and then 3 weeks, and then it was 2 weeks, and then it was the teacher training.
Okay, gotcha.
So it was like, it was almost as if I was having this really big, because I was exhausted. I was having this really big resistance, which happens ironically before the ATIH. It happened to me. I tried doing the ATIH a few times with a specific teacher. I even had the hotels booked, couldn't get there.
Right.
My schedule got extended when I was in Argentina, couldn't get back.
Wow.
I was like, right, I cancelled it. But then when I was, it was because everything happens perfect for you in that journey, in that thing. I was in London, a gap came up. It was like this thing got cancelled, so I had like a week. No, yeah, 5 days. It was 6 days. I had 6 days. Looked on the school of remembering. There was a workshop at the other side of Belgium, almost in Germany, in Hasselt, and it was with Tessie McCabe, who's a phenomenal teacher, phenomenal flower of life, phenomenal at ATIH. And I was like, right, let's just do it. Booked it. I'm like, you still got any places? I'd love to come. And I was in London the one night. I managed to book the ferry just in time. I drove straight to Belgium, and I got there at like 7 or 8 o'clock at night, and that was it. I was there. So it's like you just never know, but it's perfect. And then you look back on it. So day one of that workshop, I was told who my second teacher was going to be, so I ended up going on the workshop with her. All perfect. It's all perfect. So what I'm saying is, what you need and what you want is two different things,
Ah,
and
great
you've
point.
got to learn to allow this whole process to be, and not fight it. And like, your mind can get involved a lot. And I still now learn lessons. It happened to me like 2 weeks ago. It was really funny. It was traumatic for a couple of days, but it was really funny when I look back at it now. You're like, you're doing it again.
Well,
So
let's
you're
hear
not
it.
no, I won't go through that.
Ah,
Wow,
come
won't go
on.
through
What
that.
happened?
It involves the police again. But it's part of the whole lockdown situation.
Mm.
And but yeah, long story. But yeah, it's a case of just allow that process to be. Don't fight the process. Know that everything you need is going to come to you, and that's the, it's such a basic thing.
You know,
And,
there's
people want bells and whistles. People want to they expect their life to change. See fireworks.
yes, I hear you on that one. And we all pass through that. We want, the glory and the fun and the fireworks. But
And
sometimes,
same with relationships.
yeah,
Same with
yeah,
relationships. You know, it's that whole thing of, if it's not
passion,
for the
love.
benefit of everyone, it will go. Your
Yeah,
relation. There's some people, even with basic workshops around hypnosis and stuff. And you go in and you heal people of something. When you're a hypnotherapist, we you know because that's what the other thing I didn't talk about earlier is, I do the NLP side, is the hypnotherapy side. But even when you do an intervention with someone in life, not just the ATIH workshop as such, you do an intervention with someone when they need it, and it's as if everything becomes clear to them at that point, and they realize that parts of their existence doesn't really benefit them at all, not from an egotistical perspective or for a selfish reason. It's like, this is not working for anyone, and then everything falls away that doesn't benefit them, so they can move forward. Very, very similar in this process. The stuff that doesn't need to be there will gradually fall away. Whether it's painful or not, it's a different matter. It's just. But grace and ease is the thing that I often tell people, is when you go through this, a lot of it is, it's not as hard as it used to be. The lessons are not as harsh as it used to be. And even when you think it's not doing it, it is.
mm,
I had a situation when I was at a festival. I was in an impossible situation with someone, and I don't want to go too much detail with it, but it was it was a really tough day. It was a tough couple of weeks, but this was a tough day, and there was lots going on to learn. And
lots of friction.
so I wrote, it's just lessons, just people being people. Everybody goes through those relationships in business, and your work, your careers. I think there's always someone that challenges you to a point. I don't get challenged much. Not not in the how do you describe it? Um, it was just learning to deal with this specific person, but he made everyone else miserable around me
Right.
rather than me, because I could deal with it to a point. It's just like, right, okay, I'm not going to get anywhere with this guy. You just allow it to be. And I was, but it made everyone else miserable, and I couldn't stop their emotions from going. But it was a hard day, and I found it emotionally draining towards the end. And then I got to the hotel, I know it sounds trivial, but it was this little thing. There was a bar. There was a bar there, and there was a fridge. In Europe, they have these Heineken fridges where they freeze the glasses so it's perfect temperature, and then it's a super chilled pump, and it's a. I mean, I don't drink much, but that had a small glass of beer, and it was the most perfect thing I could have had for that day to end off. For me to sit down and go, "There's your reward for for dealing with what you've dealt with today." You know, it was like the perfect ending to a day of lessons, and it's just when you think this is all bullshit, nothing's different. It just reminds you. It's sort of, it just gives you that little, okay, you're back on the, you're back in awareness mode. So your awareness is about the awareness in the situations.
Mhm.
Even when you're busy, I teach people to just, I teach them what I call the pause. So it's a breath technique, very similar to heart math. They've come out with the heart math breath work. Uh, I've been doing it for years and years and years. It's just something I teach everyone before we go into the meditations, but it also helps when you're just super, super busy. You know, you're having one of those really busy days, and so you just stop, or even set an alarm on your phone, breathe, and it'll center you back in there, and it makes a massive difference. It really, really does. Even when you think you're not in your tiny space, moving forward in life, you are. You know, you are.
Mm. All right. Thanks for that, man.
That was
Um,
kind of a long-winded answer. Really sorry.
it's okay. It got to the point. The next question is a little bit more about. It's a delicate one, and I'll just give you the premises, and then you can tell us what you think. Um, in 2000, it was the end of the biblical universe. You know, 1,000 or more thousand, and then in 2012 it was the end of the Mayan calendar, and we thought the end of the world was coming, and nothing happened. But now we're in 2020, and there was no prophecy, and the world has come to an end. And what do you think about this and the Earth evolution and the ascension process, or what people talk about as the ascension process? I know Drunvalo spoke about it extensively. I would love to hear your opinion and your perception on the subject.
Um, okay, try not to get too long-winded. Going back to the 2000 thing, the end of the biblical thing, and I think 2012 is the one to focus on for me. 2000, yes, there was definitely some sort of thing going on with that because I experienced that myself. Um, the 2012 thing for me was immense. It it's sort of, that's why at the end of 2011 it was like, right, you've had enough time playing around doing your thing. It's time to get back to work. It was almost as if it had switched. You know, I'd had some time off doing life stuff, jumping out of jumping out of the spiritual path, so to speak. You can't really jump out of it, but I wasn't I wasn't focusing on that at all. And so 2011, I had my thing, had my sort of get back on the path. But you don't even have to be of a spiritual background to realize the world isn't the same place since 2012. The workshop in 2012, when you experience people moving through the workshops at that time, not to take it too much away from the experience, but to explain the difference from them from then to now. You look at the world and how people respond to certain situations pre 2012 to what they do now. Something phenomenal for me. People see it as the end of the world, where it was just, to me, it was the end of the world as we knew it. And the shifts that have happened since, it's like everything to me is speeding up. Everything's getting faster, like almost to the point where I get overwhelmed sometimes with information and whatever. But 2012, it's just that situation where everything came into focus for me. And then you look, it's like from the workshop perspective, people were going through it and it was tough. it's hard to talk about certain things, about entities, things like that. On day 2 of the workshop, you go through this massive clearing, and I mean, some of the things that happened to me on it was just phenomenal. But it's that's the day that in the workshop for me, everyone becomes a family. It's as if everyone comes together at that point, and the workshop's perfect for that. You know, day 1 you go in and do the thing, and we sort of softens everything up. Day 2 we do the clearing, ready to move into the space on the third day. But to me, the day that everyone helps everyone and just becomes a family unit is that day 2. And it used to be incredibly difficult. I mean, to the point where it's incredibly traumatic. People releasing all sorts of trauma because you need to get that out to be able to move forward. And it was tough. I mean, some of the biggest therapies I've ever had to do has been on that day 2. You know, you see people releasing the trauma. It's amazing watching them go through it, but it can be really tough seeing some of the stuff that's coming out of some people. I mean, really tough. You know, it was challenging. Day 2 was always challenging. But then, not that it eased straight off, but what I'm saying is about 2 years ago, something to me changed in the workshops. It was balanced. I had the first workshop I'd been in where it was balanced. I had 50% male, 50% female, and it was just a lovely workshop. It was so nice having everyone was there, and it was like everybody in the workshop was ready to move to do their process with grace and with ease. That's all I can describe it as. And yeah, day 2 it was still challenges, but it was so much easier. So much easier, so much. It's just like everybody's ready for this. I was not meeting a huge amount of resistance and challenges in on day 3 or 4. It was, and the one lady I had, she'd done the flower of life, so she was just like this goddess, and she was just, yeah, she was this Australian lady, and she was flying through everything, and she was just, it was just awesome to see it, and then when they were talking about the differences between the old Merkaba, the new Merkaba, great, but that to me, that's the difference now, is the 2012 thing. We're we've reached this critical point. I always thought it was going to happen, where the more the people would do this work and go into their space, their tiny space, even activating the Merkaba, even if you just go into your tiny space, I felt that we were going to reach this critical mass, this tipping point, and I feel that we're at it. Because people going through the workshops, when I went online with the workshops last year, I only had 2 really challenging situations but that was my age and over. Anyone younger, it's just like, wow. I
Natural.
had two kids come on the. I say kids, 17 and 19,
Teenagers.
and yes, teenagers, and they were just, honestly, some of the experiences they were having coming up, it was just a breeze. Nothing was difficult for them. Nothing. It was so amazing. Just when they activated their Merkabahs, and then we talk about the beings who are just being in their tiny space, in those beings that we talk about in the workshop were just there, creating heaven on earth. This guy was just going around meeting these people and just telling me about these beings who were there, and there was, and it just unreal. The difference, the difference from then to now for people moving through this. So we say about the shifts, the 2000 to 2012, 2021. It's like, to me, that's the confirmation that we are moving through this, and it's getting easier and easier for people to move into these states, to be able to move forward and release this trauma.
Okay.
And
Okay. So
the one kid I had on the workshop, he was just this. It's like this young Buddha. He just needed no direction at all. It's almost like a formality, almost.
it just
You know,
came, got the,
that's just honest. I love it. I love it,
and
because
all.
this is the great thing about the workshop. You get the people who've been through stuff that need to release, and then you also get the youngsters coming through now that they're just so ready for it, you know, and it just gives you that sort of lift that everything's even regardless of what's going on out there, everything's perfect and everything's, you know, we're moving through it fine.
So beyond, let me see if I can summarize a little bit. And so, in your opinion, beyond what's happening in the world right now, the real important, juicy part, and fundamental part of things is going through the internal work, taking care of trauma, learning about the
Absolutely.
heart and coherence with the mind, and then
Absolutely.
going on and moving on into this new paradigm shift of life.
Yeah, you know, again, it's that situation where you see this. This is why it was, to me, it was always very urgent when I was telling you I was trying to get to this teacher training because I needed to do this, I needed to do that. I understand now why I needed to have the urgency to help people to get through this. When you think of what we've been through in the last 12 months with the lockdowns, with what the vaccines and whatever, you know, you can debate about that all day. It's just, from my particular case, I see so many people making decisions out of fear. This is the difference now. It's like this is what we've been prepared for. This is what we've been preparing for a long time. I've been preparing this for 30 years. So you see people going into these, being pushed into these states of fear, and then they want to make decisions that benefit them and them only. So you see it in the music industry where people are glad, they're really happy, and it's almost like a trophy. You've had your vaccine, let's get back to work. We can't go back to work until you've had your vaccine. Or it's like, I don't care what we need to do, we need to get back to work. And it's just people making decisions that benefit them in the short term, maybe, but not in the long term. Then, you know, we all have to have this vaccine to go back to work. Stop being selfish. So there's just this division. You see people going into fear and division, whereas it's like, right, you know, you need to go back to work from a survival perspective because your money's running out. I get it, but you can see it's just like they hate everyone because they're being selfish for not having vaccines, and we just got to get back to work. Stay in your house, don't go out anywhere, because if you go out you're risking everyone and we can't go back to work. There's no real, yes, I don't want to get into the virus debate, the lockdowns debate. It's just, it's a classic situation of people making decisions based in fear that benefit them and them only, whereas we're not getting together and making a decision from a place of unity and love, and essentially for the benefit of all beings. That's the only way forward in this. You know, making decisions for yourself for the benefit of all beings, making decisions from a political level for the benefit of all beings. If we all did that simple concept, the world would be a much better place, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that what we're doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very complicated situation. I think I agree
Absolutely.
with you, but like every side of the cake thinks that they're doing the best for humanity or for the.
I know it's a massive debate, and like I said, I don't want to. I'm just
Yeah, we
using
don't
that
need to
as
go
one
into it, but
example.
like yeah,
Yeah, it's about making those decisions based on the benefit of everyone and everything. And I think that's from a common. You don't even have to go. I'm going in my heart to make that decision. You can make that from a pure logic decision. I'm making a decision for the benefit of everyone here. If we did it on a local level, a national level, international level, you know. But what I'm saying is creating that reality from that oneness.
okay. So I've got another question for you about um, noticing a change in your ability, in your parapsychology ability, in your extrasensory perceptions, noticing if there was a spike on improvement on your ability to uh, perceive precognition, premonition, telepathy, any other extrasensory perceptions, remote viewing, out of body experience. You mentioned that before. I'm wondering if you noticed there was a spike in all of this after the teacher training.
Um, After my first workshop, you mean? Definitely after my first workshop, incredible experiences to give me confirmation, and I've always been that way inclined anyway. I'm not one of these medium types who can just go around and see it and experience things, other beings walking around, that kind of thing.
Yeah, me neither.
I need to be in a specific state for that to happen. Always seen future, always had premonitions, that kind of thing. The Yeah, to answer your questions, yes. After the workshop, definitely in the first 6 months to 8 months, massive changes, massive, um, massive. It's a lot of it wouldn't make sense to anyone else, but what I urge the people who do the workshops to do is, when you leave the workshop and you settle down, ask for confirmation for certain things. It leads to some amazing experiences. You can test things, it's it it can produce some amazing results that
Give us an
will.
example about
No,
testing and asking. No.
no. When I said off camera, I've never told people about this experience. There's a couple of experiences I just think I don't want to. These experiences are absolutely phenomenal. It gave me a confirmation that this reality is not what people think. It gave me a confirmation that whatever happened in the workshop had a massive impact on me, physically, mentally, emotionally. It just test it for yourselves and find out. You start to you everyone experience. The thing is, if I tell you my experiences, it's like I say in the workshop. That's why I don't tell them my experience of the Merkaba activation
Creates
until after they've done
expectations.
it,
Right.
because it creates those expectations, and they're like, it didn't happen. When you go into they expect, when you go into the heart meditations, that this whole thing's meant to happen. You all experience it different,
Right. So
but you just
but
have to
how do you test
trust.
it? How do you ask for testing? You literally
I guess you
set your
you
attention.
ask in whatever way that.
Suits you.
uh I ask for one specific thing to happen to give me confirmation that specific deities or specific beings or Mother Earth then was listening to me, and she could understand me, and we have this connection. And I made it in a specific time frame, and it worked. I had the confirmation. There's other things that you can just I don't know off the top of my head. Wow. I just ask for confirmation, I guess, of whatever you want. Is my macabre activated? Is are my disc are my discs there? I don't know. Whatever question you have, ask, because you have the resources there.
All right.
Even if it's in your waking state and you want to know something, do it. Just ask and ask for confirmation. Play with it. Everyone gets really serious after the workshop. You can see it. It's really, but it's to me, it's playful. It's when you go to the playful side, this thing opens up, and it creates. You can communicate with things you don't realize are there. You can you can communicate with things that not everyday people see. There's stuff to this. There's a dimension to this that not a lot of people talk about. And I haven't even heard other teachers talk about a lot of it. So I'm assuming they're all going through it. But yeah.
I mean, this is why I'm doing all of this, so I can dig all these experiences out of you guys.
I mean, like I said, a lot of it is personal to whoever's going through it, and what would make sense to me wouldn't make sense to you guys. And there's a few experiences I won't ever talk about because no one would ever believe them.
Or because you don't want to create expectation, and it's because they're very precious to you, and it's no
Yeah,
point.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, there's a value to I want to strike an arrow for those that are listening to us. There's an extreme value in understanding the experiences that other seekers or other yogis in this case head, simply because when it happens to you, you may connect to their experience, and that's why we're talking about this. Um, I found extreme value in the works of Yogananda Paramahamsa and Muktananda, Swami Muktananda, and any other of the yogis that speak of their own personal experience while in meditation, because it's a very, very subtle and arcane and even ancient. Um, I don't want to go into the DNA and everything that could, that could stir up the criticism of the academic and scientific community, but there is something very, very ancient and arcane about the process of meditation, how we experience certain things and what is happening in there. And the more you listen to this experience, the more you're inspired and you have a chance to recognize what's happening to you as it's happening.
Absolutely.
Another giant nowadays, another our day giant is Dr. Dispenza. I don't know if you've listened to read some of his books.
Yeah,
Or,
yeah, for sure.
I mean, the guy is a ginormous high level. His level of experience and articulation, the way he can express, demonstrates how much understanding and self-analysis is behind his words. And he's literally had the experience and extrapolated everything that he could, and from there went into other direction of exploration and understanding, and
Absolutely.
repeated, understood, and
Absolutely.
articulated. So like,
Absolutely. Just
satisfying.
to touch on that as well, one of the first things I advise when people leave the workshop is to one, go into Eckhart Tolle's work, because to me it anchors the tiny space into our reality. It's like he talks about being in that moment. The New Earth, his book, The New Earth, for me is just a Bible after the workshop. It explains what we need to do to create this new Earth. And Dispenza, when anything by Greg Braden, because I man crush on Greg Braden, and Dispenza, he talks about a specific incident with his son. I don't know if you remember it from one of the books, where he talks about, it's a classic it's a
Please
classic case.
do briefly mention it for the audience.
So so his son needed to come back home, or he needed finances to do something, to get a new job. He needed to, I can't remember the ins and outs. The theory behind it is, his son needed to understand that to create something new in his life, a new path in his life, he needed to trust that something new was going to come to him, which is one thing we teach on the workshop, is just, love, truth, beauty, peace, harmony, trust. You trust that all you need is going to come to you. And that's massive in our work. It's massive. Even everyday life, where you talk to plumbers, you talk to anyone self-employed, it's like, oh, say, look, you have to live with that trust. Because if you don't live with the trust, you're almost inviting in that same experience you've had before, of fear. If you stay in that harmony of knowing and trusting that what you need is going to come to you, it'll come. And I've tested it time and time and time and time again, and it happens every time. And Dispenza says about it, and his son gets this new job. Basically, he didn't give his son the money to do something, because it would have taken him on a different path. He didn't give him the money. He said, look, you basically go out there and you trust that something, you have to do something to get to this point. And his son, he didn't give his son the money, but instantly the son went and got his dream job in a surf shop somewhere. And it was just like, that's our work. He's talking about our work. And I love the way he puts it across. He's just so practical with it.
Yeah.
That's why I love, after the workshop, I always tell people, get New Earth, anything by Greg Braden, and then Dispenza's work is phenomenal. It's just phenomenal.
I absolutely
They're the guys, to me. It's just like, for me, Eckhart Tolle is he's like a modern
pillars,
day
the
Jesus.
giants.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Man, it was a pleasure talking.
Did that answer your question?
Absolutely did.
Right.
I
Okay.
mean, I could dig a little more, but I'm happy with your answer.
Sorry, I tend to sidetrack quite a lot.
Don't worry, we're definitely on the ball here. But it's been 3 hours, and despite how much I love our conversation,
Oh
we
wow, is that 3 hours?
yeah, I didn't realize it either, but it's telling me
Wow.
59.
Sorry, that's me waffling on.
Oh no, it was completely joyful. This is your chance, man, to explain to everybody what is your website, how to get in touch with you, what are your offerings, when is the next ATIH. Tell us.
Okay, so my main one at the moment is I lost my December, January workshops to the lockdown. So this is my first workshop this year. It's going to be next month, which is April. I've split it up. I'm doing this. I was sort of talking about splitting up the workshop from the 4 days to make it accessible because people are struggling to do the whole 4 days online. And then everyone's all of a sudden there's a bunch of teachers doing it. One of my colleagues basically messaged me saying that she's done it over 2 weekends. I'm like, that's what I was thinking about. That's exactly what I was thinking about. I'm gonna try it. So I'm doing 3 weekends from mid-April to start of May. So we're doing first 2 days. I think it's the 16th, 17th. I haven't got the dates. Sorry, a bit unprepared. It's all on the School of Remembrance site. But then, so it's going to be over 3 weekends. So the ATH is over the 2 weekends, and then we're doing the ATH recap and the Cosmic Race chats on the weekend after.
Nice.
And also in
That's
summer, on the solstice in summer, I got a event going on down in Avebury where we do the ATIH. So we kick off on the actual on the summer solstice, and we're going to start it in the henge with the druids. So we'll do our angel ceremony in the henge with the druids, and then we're going to do some. Obviously do the workshop, but we're going to be have a day off, and we're going to do some sightseeing, and we're going to be doing some crop circle adventures, and we're going to be doing some sky watches and some Stephen Greer contact experiences, and then we're going to do the cosmic race work again.
fun
So it's
stuff. That's a
all
full week, I assume.
yeah, it's a whole week. So with a day off in between for us to do the work in that whole crop circle region in Avebury in Wiltshire. So we'll be going down to Alton Barnes and we'll be doing some exciting stuff there.
Nice.
It's a phenomenal place in the summer. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
I'm sure it is.
But website stuff, I'm just on the School of Remembering for a minute. I'm still in the process of rejigging my social media because I'm rubbish at it.
There's also
Terrible. I'm terrible at social media, so still in the learning phases of that.
there's also the Remembering the Heart website, and I
Yeah,
believe you're
yeah,
in there as well. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, it's just I guess the same information on there as on the School of Remembering, but yeah, it's a great little website. That's the new. It's going to be the new website. So yeah, so I'm on that as well. So you can find me on that search on that one as well.
Beautiful. All right, you guys, any questions that you have for Pablo, write them down in the Q&As here or in the comment section. He'll answer directly, or I'll make sure that those questions are answered. And once again, thank you for joining us. Like and subscribe. Make sure you smash that little buttons. We love your participation, and see you at the next interview. Take care for now. Bye.